A once powerhouse many years ago in the gaming industry, Sega was tough to beat. It had its hands gripped around the console and gaming market and was not planning to let go without a fight. And then the fight happened, and now we don't have any more Sega consoles. But if you don't know already, you're listening to the Sonuvageek Podcast. Sonuvageek! And joining me this fine morning evening are my co-hosts. One, a man who started at the bottom and it's been downhill ever since. And two, a man who, if he had one more brain cell, it would be lonely. It's Zio and Tol. How's it going, guys?
I'm not the lonely one. Just want to make that known to everybody.
The fact that you feel the need to announce that speaks volumes. By the way, I think you forgot a very important part of your intro.
What's that?
Sega!
Thanks, Tol.
So we're talking about Sega.
No, we're not. Not anymore. Okay. You ruined everything.
All right, what are we talking about?
I quit.
Then?
I quit. You questioned my ability to host things, and now I don't want to do it anymore.
Just so long and drawn out with those intros.
So we're talking about Sega today. We're going to touch a little bit on what it is, where it came from, where it's going, how it's been, and the answers to most of that are... Thanks, Tol. I don't know if can we actually put that in there, Zio? I'm assuming we can.
Yeah, it's fine. It's totally fine.
It's a
well,
meme
if you're
at this
not
point.
listening to this podcast, that's because Tol ruined everything.
Oh, it's a half second you can edit out.
When did Sega really come in as a company?
I think it was in the 80s for America.
Was it?
I'm gonna look it up real quick.
You know, I'm gonna hear all of that typing in the editing.
So much. That's fine. I did so much research. Apparently. Let's see.
Oh, that's good.
History.
Because I know it became like really strong during the 1980s, but
yeah.
I didn't actually look up when it started.
So prepared.
Oh, I know. We're doing a great job.
Well, the company's been out since the 60s. And it was in the arcade market in the early 80s.
It's still in the arcade market. And actually, they started in the 40s.
Entry into the home console market. Okay, started in 1982 with the SG-1000. It's a funky looking console. Almost looks like a tape player. Like an old school like recording.
Oh, okay.
Like where you just push those buttons, but without those buttons. And then it has like a little controller that is about half the size of a smartphone, width-wise.
Oh, okay.
And it has one joystick on it.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that looks like their first console. So yeah, so the Sega Master System is a little more complex. I would say it looked a little more like a what were those things called before they had VHSs?
Oh,
you know what I'm
that was
talking
like
about.
those bigger ones, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't out for very long.
I don't know. Totally, you're the
honestly
oldest.
don't remember what it's.
What was it?
Before VHS?
Yeah, what was before VHS?
It was a GNV. That's what it was called.
Was it?
I don't
Don't
think so.
quote me on it.
Okay, I remember it had a different name. I just like.
No, it definitely did.
Oh my god!
It had a
Anyways,
weird sounding name too. The same that sounded bulky, just like its
Betamax,
size.
yeah,
man. Betamax.
That's what it was.
There it was.
So it looks like a Betamax system, and then the controller looks very similar to a SNES, the original Nintendo controller. It has the two buttons, but then it has a joystick instead of buttons for movement. So they kept that joystick, and then they just eliminated it by the time they got to the Genesis.
Hey, for the
awesome.
YouTube feed on this podcast, are we going to put the pictures up?
No.
No.
All
No,
right.
you guys can go look it up yourselves.
Yeah.
Link in the description. Spen.
Nope.
Don't
don't make promises. This is a very lazy podcast, Tol.
This is supposed to be easy content to make, Tol, and you're making it more complicated.
Yeah. Google SG-1000 and then Google the Sega Master System.
Just
and you
look
can
at the
see it
Wikipedia
yourself.
page on Sega. It's all
yeah,
there.
that's fine. It's
Also,
all right there.
find Tol
That's
and
what you're
shun
getting.
him.
Yes. And if you do look up these photos, comment down below and Tol will give you $5.
Not if I shun them. Or not if they shun me.
Oh, no,
He'll
they
do it
can do that
anyways.
too.
He'll still do it.
Yeah.
I will
He
not.
wants
You
your
have-
approval.
Tol has no power over that.
I want my money more than I want approval.
All right. So, anyways, it started in the 80s, right?
Yes.
But I don't think.
Oh, no, I thought it started in the 60s.
It started in the
company
40s.
started in the 60s.
40s.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to be difficult.
Where do you see 40s?
History, origins, and arcade success. In 1940, it started. Blah, 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 blah. Slot machines. Blah, 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 blah.
Jesus, that's old.
No, it started in the 60s. It has roots back in the 40s.
Because wasn't it a different company under a different name and then it
Yeah,
got bought out by somebody?
Sure.
I don't remember.
Here at Game, we have nothing but the best researchers for our topic. You know, we're all very well researched before we come in and talk about this. Most of my conversation is going to be from memory.
Anyway, originally it was called Standard Games when it was founded in Honolulu, Hawaii, and was changed whenever it was taken over by its Japanese peoples, whose names I don't care to try and find in this paragraph, to Serviced Games of Japan, which was shortened and abbreviated to SEGA.
Yeah, that's what it was.
I lost all interest because you didn't name those Japanese people, Tol. If you're going to act like you're going to do more research than us, you better bring the A game.
I'm not doing more research than you. I'm just reading it better.
I don't read. I skim.
Wow, guys, I'm so glad you're here with me.
What are you doing right now?
Nothing.
When you wake up, Spen?
Like half an hour ago?
That's right. Oh, by the way, how's The Last of Us going?
I haven't had a chance to play it this last week, and
fun fact: you're the last of us to play it.
Well, to be fair, we've been having a lot of issues with our dog right now, where he's sick. Things aren't going well, so we've been trying to. He's been to the vet a few times. We've got him on a bunch of different medicine.
Buddy.
So I mean, he seems to be on the uphill mend, but that is why I haven't played The Last of Us. I was going to play it this morning before we recorded the podcast, but we have to. Yeah. But we have to give him his medicine at one of his sets of medicine at like midnight every night. So, yeah. So that's why I haven't played The Last of Us. Although it's still on my to-do list today. So as soon as we finish up things here, I'm going to be playing a bit more.
Well, that's it for the Sonuvageek Podcast, everybody. We'll see you later.
Woo! Now with that, I got to play Satisfactory.
Back to Sega.
Still going? Okay, fine.
Yeah, so Sega really, I would say, like, even though it existed, I don't think it really became popular until the Genesis, because, it wanted...
What did it have before the Genesis? It was the Dreamcast?
No. Dreamcast was its last console.
That's right.
Yeah, so it was the Master System. The Master System is where it had most of its games, and then the Genesis is what was the biggest success for Sega, and also had the most popularity, and that's where they came up with Sonic, I believe.
The Genesis, also known as the Sega Mega Drive in non-American countries.
Yeah, but we don't need to worry about that, because the Mega Drive
is a much cooler name.
I think Genesis is a better name, because it symbolizes the beginning of Sega. Because that's when Sega became popular. It was the genesis of their brand.
Plus, calling it Genesis, it essentially makes it a biblical part of the video game history.
Yeah.
That's a stretch. I'll give it to you. It's early morning. You need to stretch.
Sonic did come out on the Genesis, didn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
And he was one of like the flagship guys of
the mascot of Sega.
Yeah, pretty much.
The Sega brand happens after Sonic flies by.
Mm-hmm.
So he was always in the intro.
Yeah, and I don't think they could have done any better with a mascot, because Sonic basically captured the core idea of the 90s attitude.
Honestly, they couldn't do any better. They tried it out with that Alex Kidd, whose name I recognize, but I cannot think what he looks like. Yeah.
Who's Alex Kidd?
Alex Kidd is the mascot they tried to make catch on before Sonic came in. Fun fact, Sonic's original name, his working title was Mr. Needlemouse.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, Sonic is way better.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, although Mr. Needlemouse would have been way more entertaining to hear in all of the cartoons with him.
I think it's fun to say.
That should be like his grandpa.
I think that's an excellent idea. Sega, if you're listening to this and you're thinking of making another Sonic game, go ahead and use our idea, because it can't be any worse than some of the other Sonic games that have been out there.
Well, I think we've proven by now, Spen, that Sega A, does not listen to its fans, and B, does not use any ideas for Sonic games, and C, has no idea how to make a Sonic game, because the most successful one in the last 2 decades was fan-made.
Well, I would argue that...
That's not true. I'd say the Sonic Generations game was really popular and successful.
Yeah, but that was also taking a leaf out of the one that I was just talking about, whose name escapes me at the moment.
But that still says they made a successful Sonic game.
After being reminded by the fans what a successful Sonic game was.
Still made one.
I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea, the things they've tried with the Sonic games, because usually when a Sonic game has turned out bad, it's because they were like, hey, this is a really cool idea, let's run with it and see what happens. Yeah. So they're taking risks with Sonic, and it's working because, I mean, yes, there's going to be some bad or there have been some Sonic games that are kind of like, let's avoid these and pretend they don't exist. But then, because of that, there have been fantastic games where they've been like, all right, this worked in the last game, everybody hated this in that game, they hated that in that game, we're never going to do that in that game, but look at these 3 things that were fantastic. Let's throw them in the next one and let's see what kind of crazy concoction we get. And then sometimes it's a masterpiece.
Those Sonic games only existed because of the most popular Sonic games ever, Sonic Adventure 1 and 2.
which are great games. Now, I will say this. I have tried just about every Sonic game that's come out, and I have found ways to enjoy all of them once you get past the oddities of them. Even Shadow the Hedgehog is good once you get into it and start exploring more of it.
Oh, okay.
On the surface, they're terrible. On the surface, but once you dig in deeper, that's where the gold is. But Sonic 06 will always be a big pile of poo.
I think the problem they went with Sonic is they tried to make it they tried to make Sonic edgy as opposed to just the character he was. Just a fast, chili dog eating man or hedgehog. And then
See,
Shadow
I like
was
his
supposed
personality
to be,
though.
Oh no, I liked his cocky personality and everything, but I'm saying they tried to make him too edgy. Like they redesigned him, made him skinnier, cooler,
They
more
Sasuke'd
hip.
him.
He needs to be more Spider-Man than Bart Simpson, I think.
Exactly, because they already have Shadow. They have the edgy Sonic.
That's true.
You don't need.
He does have the appearance for more of an edgy one as well, because he's got all those like contrasting, like more of the sharp, jagged looks and the dark palette, and it's like, whoa.
And like
so
every
mysterious.
game, every iteration, all of the characters lose about 6 IQ points.
Do they really?
They get pretty dumb.
Yeah, they get
That's
pretty dumb.
awesome.
But that's also that's a weird Japanese thing, I think. Like,
Is it?
Yeah, I mean, because think about anime cliches, There's always those cliches that Japanese shows and video games or JRPGs, they always have,
Oh, that's true.
You have the overbearing macho man, you have the old wise guy that the young, like, peppy girl hangs out with all the time for some reason, because, they're an unlikely duo.
Yeah.
It's just, they have those cliches that they gotta have in there. And Sonic is no extension.
At this point, a walking cliche.
See, I'm okay with
Running
that, though, because I
cliche.
really love those cliches in animes.
Rolling
It
cliche.
makes them so much more entertaining.
Yeah. Anyways,
It just,
back to
Sonic
Sega,
isn't
right?
about the story, it's more of about going fast, collecting coins, and I think it kind of
They put
falls
too
off
much story
there.
in some of them. Sonic 06 especially. Actually, no. Sonic Forces. Way too much emphasis on story.
See, I don't know, there's too many of them, and I've never really played Sonic before, so.
Sonic Forces is about the character, the person that you create. It's not about Sonic or any of the main characters of the franchise. It's a story about the
that's kinda
character
cool.
that you create, which is great in concept, but terribly done in execution.
I think if they were to bring Sonic back in some fashion, I think they should go back to kind of his roots, but with the cartoon adaptation. So where you have the Mr. Robotnik, and then he has the robot chicken thing, and then the other robot, and they should go campy and silly with it. I think that would be a fun story. Use the world that Sonic lives in, not like the real world that they like to put him in all the time.
It's funny you say that, because I think there's been a lot of things that we've talked about, and you're always like, make it more campy, make it more silly.
Well, that's what it's hard to
there's
not
nothing wrong
enjoy a
with
game
that.
that is campy and silly.
That's true. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it's funny because those are the exact words you use for a lot of different things that we've talked about on the podcast. It's like just a little more campy, a little more silly.
Smiley, can you fact check that?
I can give you a...
Here it goes again.
Smiley, if you go back to the podcast where we talked about realism in video games, you'll hear it a bunch in that one.
Oh my god, that's true. I like the word campy, okay?
Hey, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a fun word to say.
You use that word so much it's lost all meaning.
Oh, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear it.
It's not even... It's you use it so much that campy isn't even campy anymore.
You use it so much it's gotten cancer.
So that might have been stretching a little far, but there was a part of me that really enjoyed it, so thank you.
Well, that would be the silly part of it.
We were talking about Sega, right?
Sometimes.
Yeah. So, coming into the Sega,
Yeah.
it started off being competitive against Nintendo, and I think it was very successful, especially in the beginning, because Sega...
Oh, yeah.
One things that we talked about, was it a couple podcasts ago, I believe, or was it last podcast? I think it was two.
I don't know. You have to tell me what it was that we were talking about. So
I don't know. We were talking about, I think it was the realism in video games, and then at the end I talked about the Sega for a little bit.
I think so. There's been 2 or 3 podcasts that you've brought up Sega.
Okay. Well, I still firmly believe that Sega, it was a pioneer of consoles. It started things that people think are brand new, like, to modern society for video gaming. Like, we already talked about the Sega Channel and how it already brought along the subscription service for video games.
Well, we talked about that in a previous podcast. Do you want to touch on that a little here?
That's what I'm saying. So, like, it did that. It had the Sega Channel, which was connected to your cable, and you could pay, I think it was like $15 a month, and then you had access to like 50 video games every month that had a recycling, rotating library.
Shoot, that's better than today's online services.
That's what I'm trying to say. Like, it did this in the early 90s. All you did was plug it through your cable, and it was just a subscription. You got access to all their games, essentially. You got to play them whenever you wanted. Because they were trying to compete with Blockbuster at the time, which was, if you wanted to play a video game, you had to go to Blockbuster and go rent it. And I like to think that was very smart on their part, but they just lost focus as the consoles grew.
Well, I think a large portion of that too came to the fact that their goal was basically to beat Nintendo. They were doing everything they could to take the champion belt away from them. I mean, which goes to show, especially with their slogan. I think they were focusing too much on how do we beat Nintendo, that once they did, they didn't really have a direction that they moved very well after that. It's like that was their focus for so long that once they made it there, it's like trying to
popular. Now what?
It's like trying to beat someone else to the top of a mountain. It's like once you finally get up there, you beat them there, but it's like, okay, now what? We have no plan on how to get back down or where to go next.
I actually have real world experience in that one.
I think I mean, you're right, because their slogan was Sega does what Nintendo don't, because like Nintendo is so focused on family and, you know, children and stuff. That's kind of what Sega pointed out for their games. They're like, oh, look, Nintendo's for kiddies. We have arcade
It shows
games.
a lot in their Crash Bandicoot commercials too.
And they wanted to bring everybody from the arcades to their home console. So they started incorporating arcade games and making them actual video games that you can play on the Sega. And I think that was very successful up until, you know, the arcades started dying. People started caring less about arcades and more so about their home console. And I think the biggest focus is as they release more and more consoles, they lost focus on the third-party developers, because that was growing. That was becoming bigger for each console. Nothing was first-party or in-house anymore.
Yeah, which is the same kind of mistake that Nintendo started making a little while ago, that they've rectified now, thank God.
Yeah, no, it's funny how, like, you see these mistakes repeat themselves throughout every home console. Like, Nintendo's done it, Sony's done it, Microsoft's done it, Sega's done it. Like, we've seen this happen over and over again, and yet no one's really learned 100%. Like, they learn after they make the mistake, but
why don't we do this?
Make that mistake first.
Well, we tried that before. Yeah, but why don't we do it? I don't know. Let's try it again. Oh yeah, that's why.
Well, it's tough too, because it's not like the companies all have, I mean, this is a little off topic, but it's not like the companies all have the exact same people there every time it's happened. Like, there's always new people working and new people with different ideas. And I mean, there could also be stuff in the background going on where they go and look at things and like, all right, it's not helping us at all doing anything with third parties, so let's not worry about it for this next console. And then because it's not there, we notice it and we start pointing it out, and that's when we want the third party. And I mean, I don't know if that's what's happening, but that could very well be factors that play into it too.
Thinking about this, I think it'd be fun to talk about Sega in the sense of, like, because they did pioneer. They were way ahead of its time. I think if the Sega, like, was a console that existed and then they came up with these ideas around more today's society, I think they would have been way more successful.
I think it's possible. There's still a fair few of them that are, I think, would still be a little weird for now, where we're not quite yet where it needs to be.
There's still quite a few things, but I want to talk about a few. I think let's talk about the pioneers. I think would be wise. Like, what are the things they came out with, how that was very intelligent, what they could have done better with it, and then we could talk about what killed Sega ultimately.
Things they pioneered. Sure. What you mean, like the first handheld console or motion controls? First motion controls.
Their Game Gear. So their first handheld was a Game Gear.
I haven't heard that in years.
Yeah, it's very big. I think I had one, if I remember correctly. I had one. I think it was the size of like the Wii U controller.
I had one called a Nomad.
I think it was like in between the Wii U controller and the 3DS.
It was freaking huge. But one of the coolest things about it that they pioneered wasn't the handheld itself, because they had the Game Boy, and the Game Boy was better because it was smaller and more compact. But the Game Gear was a portable Sega. What made it different is it played the Sega Genesis games in the Game Gear.
Yeah.
And it was backlit.
Yeah, and it was backlit. And you could also watch TV on it.
What?
Yeah, it was one of the first portable TVs. So
you could watch TV on it.
So what you could do, similar to like how they had the Sega channel, is through the cable companies, they created another thing for their Game Gear that you could attach, and you could plug it in. It was a receiver essentially with antennas, and you could watch TV on your Game Gear.
I mean, the screen's only like 2 inches by 3, but it's...
But every time we talk about Sega, there's this another thing you like pull out of your back pocket. You're like, you think your Nintendo's so cool with all its pioneering stuff? Wham! Check out what Sega did. It's like, my God.
Sega did all kinds of crazy and innovative things. The problem is that I think they just stretched themselves too thin. You know, they tried too much and
no, that's fair.
Had a hard time finding an identity because of it.
And that's why I think it's actually kind of good that they stopped doing consoles, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah, so like the Game Gear was one of their first big pioneers too. Like they had the channel. The Genesis was a huge success, and the Genesis is kind of where they created, instead of creating a new console, like you see the PlayStation 3, 3.5, they created essentially expansion packs to the console. And so like the Genesis had all kinds of add-ons that you could put with it. They're also the first console to have an add-on for CD-ROMs, so you can play music through it and listen through it instead of having to buy a whole huge CD player system, which back then was extremely expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like it was this thing you could attach underneath the Sega Genesis, and it kind of made the Sega Genesis twice as long. And then on one side you could play the games, and on the other side you could play CD-ROMs.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
God, there's so much that it's done.
Yeah. So like the Game Gear. Why do you the Game Gear was awesome. It was pretty expensive, I believe. I think it was like over $100.
Which back then is a fair amount.
Yeah, back in the 90s. But then they had that add-on. Like I said, you could watch TV on it, and then you didn't have to buy separate games for the Game Gear, unlike the Game Boy. So even though it was more expensive up front, in the long run, you'd save money, because then you could just play Sonic the Hedgehog from your Genesis, pull it out, pop it in your Game Gear, and then head on your way.
God, that's...
That is exactly what the Switch is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's crazy how the Switch is supposed to be this whole new innovative console, which Genesis kind of did it first in a weird way.
Well, if you look at it, most popular technology these days is something that's been stolen from someone else. Smartwatches were stolen from movies. Touchscreen tablets were taken from, I think...
To say stolen from a movie, Tol, I mean, the idea of it came from a movie, sure, but it
Microsoft tried doing touchscreen tablets years before the iPad came out and never caught on.
Right. Because it's all about that marketing and the brand.
Because wasn't there talk about having something like that for... Or no, that's not what it was. There was supposed to be a bunch of apps that they were talking about to come with different Microsoft games, so that while you were playing the game, you'd connect your tablet to it, and it would have all these other special features. So it's like when you're playing a game, like the mini map is on your tablet or your phone, or like all these other different things. And that's a little off topic, but that's something I remember them talking about. I think it was even for the Xbox 360, but it never happened.
Several games have done that, actually. I had something like that.
Not till recently, though.
Assassin's Creed.
Done what?
Synchronizing an application on a mobile device with the game.
Oh, yeah.
Playing Assassin's Creed Origins, I could look at the map there. I could mark something. It puts a waypoint up on my screen.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet that you can do that with that stuff. But they'd been talking about doing that a long time ago, but I don't think it ever happened.
Another thing I think was really cool Sega has done is you can download games as well.
Did you?
Yeah. So like they had downloadable games way back then as well through the Sega TV channel, the Sega channel.
See, but that was also back when... that was back when your internet came through your phone, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or cable.
Yeah, it was through cable.
I can understand in that situation then why it didn't take off as well as it does now. Just because with the speeds of things too, I'm sure it would have taken a fair bit of time for it to download back then as well.
Oh, plus
and so because of that, then
it only took a few minutes because games weren't very big back then.
Yeah, but what about the transfer of data back then? It wasn't that big, was it?
I don't think so. I'm not sure, honestly.
I don't know. We'll have to look into it.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up.
Smiley, if you can fact check that for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Fact check that.
Thank you, Smiley.
But yeah, I mean, they did all kinds of things. Like the Genesis had all kind of add-ons. Like I was saying, they had that CD-ROM add-on. They had another add-on. It was called what was it called? It was like 32X or 32X or something like that. It was a graphics upgrade for the console, essentially.
God, that's awesome.
So like back when 8-bit and 16-bit was super popular, you had this little add-on you could add into the Genesis, and then it would kind of make your games look a little better. So it was one of those.
Wait. You could add on the add-on? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Because if so, that's amazing.
You just plug in the add-on.
Nice. You add on the add-on so that it... Oh my god.
That's why it was called an add-on. It was like a literal plug-in.
No, I know. So I was in my head. It sounded way more cooler to bring that up and try and bug you about it. But hearing myself say it the second time, I realized, no, Spencer, this is stupid.
Oh, thanks, Tol. Yeah, see, that's what it was. So you plugged it in.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so you plug that in.
Oh, this is that thing you were talking about where you could like put Sonic inside Sonic to get the third Sonic game.
Kind of similar concept. So this was just the add-on to make the console more powerful, and then you plug the game on top. But the game I was talking about before was Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was technically, or Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and 3 were technically one game, so they split it, and then they put a cartridge slot on top of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and you could plug 3 into it, or other Sonic games, and it would kind of change the experience of how you play the game.
Yeah.
So this would be also the first iteration of a multi-disc or multi-cartridge game, as opposed to PlayStation's early
I think
RPGs,
that's a
Final
pretty
Fantasy,
far stretch, but you could make that connection if you really wanted to.
It wasn't like two games made one story. They were two separate games, but you could plug. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 had this weird little coding in it. So like if you plugged in Sonic the Hedgehog 3 or Sonic and Knuckles, okay, that was the other game. So if you put one of those two games on top of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, it would give you added on content or extra an extra character to play, or even some extra levels. So it kind of changed your experience of the game just a little bit, which was very fascinating to do for a game.
So I don't think there's been anything like that.
No, the Sega Saturn was pretty straightforward. It was the first CD console for Sega. It didn't have also the shortest lifespan, I believe. I think it was only like 4 years or something like that.
Oh, okay, that's pretty short then.
The reason is I read into this part specifically. They got a CEO or a new president for Sega in the American division. He got fired from Sony and Sega hired him, and he thought the Saturn was a failure and was very public about it. So he stopped like production of it. He stopped like people making games for it, and then they released the Dreamcast.
That went very well.
Yes. And while the Dreamcast, it was technically better than the PlayStation when it came out, because it came out halfway through the PlayStation's life cycle.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, the Dreamcast also has some of the most well-known and popular games.
Iconic games. Shenmue.
Yeah,
iconic games, that's the word to put
Sonic Adventure 1, 2.
Yeah, no, it definitely had the most popular games. It was a great console. It was just also the hardest to develop for. But the Dreamcast was also very innovative. Like, Sega took very, very drastic steps to make their consoles unique, and I think the Dreamcast really took a hold on that. So, as I explained to you, the controller, it was a huge controller. It had a similar layout to, I would say, an Xbox controller.
It inspired the Xbox controller, honestly.
And then that's because Xbox wanted to make the Dreamcast. It also had a memory card called the Visual Memory Card that was a mini Game Boy in itself. So it had buttons on it, and you could play like a Tamagotchi, and it had games for it. But
I love the
also,
that's right.
You plugged it into the controller, and it would enhance your game experience for whatever game you're playing. It was popularized by the Sonic Adventure games because you could get these little creatures that you could raise. Yeah, the chows. And you could raise them, and you could take them on the go and play with them in your little visual memory unit.
That's awesome.
So it was one of the first controllers to have a screen on it as well that was interactive.
And synchronized with the mobile application. Hey!
Yeah. And this isn't too well known either, but Dreamcast had its first online gaming ever. It was on the Dreamcast.
Phantasy Star Online, I think, was the first one I heard of.
Phantasy Star Online was the first. It was the first online MMO.
I played it.
The
I
game
loved
of
it.
my
I didn't get
childhood.
very far. It's still popular.
You missed out. It is.
It is. It's still got a hugely popular.
I think it's even still the same iteration of the game, right? Or has it been re-released?
It's had a few
sure.
re-releases, and they're different iterations. They've added another chapter onto the end of it as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Phantasy
God, I
Star is
love that
also
game.
part of the reason why the Dreamcast died out, because of its popularity. Sega decided to pull away from video game development and focus on online and mobile gaming.
Nice.
No, I don't think that was a bad decision at all. Their content has gotten only better since they've narrowed down their focus.
That's
They
true.
had a lot of really good content.
I'm not saying they had bad content before. A lot of it's gotten better.
All I can think about now is playing Phantasy Star Online and feeding my Meg. God, I loved that game.
But yeah,
It's not even a. I wouldn't consider. I mean, looking at games now, it's not fantastic. For its time, it was amazing, but even now, there's still days where me and some buddies get together. We throw the GameCube up on an old TV and pop in Phantasy Star Online, and we just grind away for hours. I never played it on Sega stuff, so.
Well,
yeah, so
sorry.
I mean,
it has its roots there. That's the important thing.
yeah, like I think Sega was definitely ahead of its time. It really had innovative and creative ideas for their consoles, and I like to think that if they were just smarter about the marketing, I think Sega would have still been a top dog in today's gaming society.
It's possible.
I think a lot of it was they obviously had a hard time with business modeling. I think that was a big struggle for them, was just focusing on what to focus on and what to push. And like you said, they were so focused on beating Nintendo that when they got to the top for that shiny little moment they were there, they didn't know what to do after that.
Because their slogan and everything that they were pushing for, it was at the point then where it's like, well, if we keep going with this, now we're just a bunch of douches because we're already winning. We're not the underdog anymore.
Right. I mean, and after that, they just kind of lost their way. Like I said, I think it was mostly business structuring behind the scenes that really killed them. Because when I read about a lot of their consoles, is the Genesis was the easiest game to develop games for. Or it was the easiest console to develop games for. Apparently, it was super development friendly. It was super easy to play with. That's why they had so many add-ons as well. One, it was just a money grab to have add-ons, but it was also just super easy to make them just because of how easy it was to create things for the Genesis.
That's awesome.
But then when the PlayStation came out, that pushed the CD-ROM gaming, and PlayStation was huge, and then that's when the Saturn was released as well. But they hired that CEO from Sony. The reason he got fired, by the way, from Sony was because he didn't believe RPGs would make it into the North American markets, which is funny because that's kind of what pushed Sony forward.
That's true. I think, though, at the time, like, there wasn't really much like that, and it wasn't a very popular one.
No,
so I don't.
You're absolutely
definitely
right.
Couldn't have seen Final Fantasy VII coming.
No, I'm
I don't
not
think
saying
anybody
he
saw
could
it
have
coming.
seen Final Fantasy VII coming, but like
I know.
the Japanese market had him over.
Yeah.
On the Sega Saturn, it was released in Japan, and it was wildly successful over there because they've had RPGs for a long time over there.
Mm-hmm.
But he said he didn't think American audiences would like RPGs. And so he refused to release like half of their library on the Saturn, and that really hurt the Saturn. That's why the Dreamcast was made. So he got fired from Sega,
which is a good thing.
Yeah,
honestly, a lot of my favorite RPGs were on the Saturn.
Unfortunately,
on the Dreamcast.
Unfortunately, it hurt the company so much they lost millions in the Saturn because of that.
Way to go! This is why you can't trust America.
Or at least one man.
They ruin everything that's good because they don't think people are going to like it.
That's right.
Way to go, America.
I mean, it's the same reason we were cautious about showing them you, Spen.
And you're pretty darn happy you did now, aren't you? Yeah, you are.
I know I am.
It would have been detrimental if you hadn't.
But
who are we even talking about? You were active long before I was around.
Sega was a interesting console. Sega was a great console. I think I still stand by them. They're one of my favorite consoles. I loved playing all my games on them. I only became a PlayStation fanatic because the Dreamcast was more expensive at the time, and so I got a PlayStation. And then what really killed the Dreamcast was the PS2. That was kind of the final nail in the coffin for Sega. As
Well,
I
the
read about it.
PS2 was amazing.
Well, the PS2 was so wildly successful because of their DVD player inside of it. That's what made the PS2 the most successful console of all time. That's why it's still the most successful console of all time. Because at the time, DVD players alone were $500-$600, but the PS2 was a $300 to $400 console. And so it was cheaper than all the DVD players, and Sony made the DVD player in-house, as Dreamcast outsourced all their stuff. So it was too expensive to put in the Dreamcast, and everyone bought the PS2, and the Dreamcast died.
It's really unfortunate that that the PS3 did the same route, but it was just a little too early to throw the Blu-ray in it.
Mm-hmm.
If it had been another maybe two or 3 years,
I think the PS3 did it so soon because the Xbox 360 came out really fast.
It was my understanding that the Blu-ray technology caught on over the regular HD DVDs because they were included on the PS3.
Well, Sony invented
because
Blu-ray.
of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was all in-house creation from them. And Blu-ray, I don't think caught on because of the PS3. I think Blu-ray just caught on over time because it was people
better.
Realized it was better. Graphical fidelity, we're all graphic snobs at one point or another.
Yeah, but would people have realized that if not for this one device that has the technology? Sony made it in-house, put it in their system. We wouldn't have known about it if not for the PS3.
Well, we had already known about it, and it was already kind of growing in popularity. It just hadn't reached that point where...
It was too expensive.
Yeah.
The thing was, Blu-ray players might have been more expensive than the PS... I don't know, they're around similar prices, because the PS3, what made that...
PS3 was cheaper by about $100 or $200.
Yeah,
they were actually selling them at a loss for a little while.
Okay.
Just to get the tech out there.
But it was also just... It came out too late. Like, the 360 came out first. It came out 6 months before the PS3 did. And I think the PS3 kind of had to, rush it all. And they wanted to make it backwards compatible. It's funny, the PS3 did almost exactly what the fans wanted.
But it was that price thing with it, though.
Price. It was just too much because of that. It was backwards compatible to the PS2 and the PS1. And
the PS1?
Yeah.
Some versions of it were.
Do you have a PS3 right now?
Yeah.
All of them can play PS1
the original
games,
PS3. That's right.
All of them can play PS1 games.
Only a few could play PS2.
But only the original
could
play the PS2.
Only the first generation of PS3s can play PS2 games.
I
didn't know they could all play PS1.
Fun fact, a good way to check that.
Every PS3 game can.
If you have a PS3 with 4 USB slots on the front, you have one of the models that can play PS2 games.
Oh, okay, cool.
I do.
I did. I lost it at my divorce. And by lost, I mean forgot to grab it on my way out. Along with my Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy anthology, which is just annoying. I haven't found that again since.
That's something that's hard to pick up.
Yeah, but I haven't really looked.
To Sega.
No, screw Sega. It's dead.
All right, fine. We'll talk
No,
about
they're not.
else.
They're actually doing quite well, developing software.
That's true. They do have a bunch of things.
They're not a console developer anymore. They're just a gaming and software developer.
Oh, and slot machines.
Was Sega the one that created Crazy Taxi?
Sorry, what'd you say, Spen?
Was Sega the company that created Crazy Taxi?
Yes.
Yeah.
They
couldn't remember if they created it or if it was just like something that was brought onto it. Because I know I played it on the GameCube.
Oh, it's all over the place. It still has Sega's logo on it. I can play it on my phone now, and it's
okay. Cool. I thought it was Sega.
It's branded by Sega, so.
So with Sega being a software developer, do you think it's better for them there? Do you think in the future they should try to come back into the console arena?
I think no one else should come into the console arena only because I don't want to buy more consoles.
What about Google's console?
Google's. There's a lot of fear and speculation going into Google's because who's to say Google just doesn't decide, you know what, nah, and just drops it. I mean, they've done it with other things before where they've gone and they started reaching into other markets and they've just decided not to continue with it because it's not worth the money that they're putting into it.
But is this really another market for them? Because what was it? It's called the Stadia or the Stradia?
I think so. I don't know. I think it has potential.
Isn't that one of the questions that you missed in the Jackbox game the other day?
Did that one come up in the Jackbox?
Yeah, it was which of these things is associated with Google and which of these things was a He-Man character.
I don't know.
That's right.
That was one of the things I was completely lost.
I did get that one
didn't
wrong.
Notice anything?
Our timing was way off. We were 10 seconds behind everyone else.
That's all right. Who won in the end of it?
That one was Sophie.
I think so.
I got second.
Yeah, because I think I won one of them. Zio won one of them. No, I didn't win any of them. Tol, you took one of the wins from me, didn't you?
I took a couple.
Oh god, that was fun. We're gonna have to do another
We definitely
stream
got to do that
of.
again. We have people.
Of Jackbox
well, we
again.
have one person in particular begging us to do another one.
Well, we'll have to. Although I don't know if we'll do Jackbox right away next time. We might try out some other games too. So if anyone's here listening and they want, if they enjoyed the stream and want to do another games night, then let us know. And if you want to do more Jackbox, tell us if you want. If there's another exciting one you want to do, let us know about that too.
Smiley, can you fact check that for us, please?
I don't know what he's fact checking, but Smiley, that's your job. So
we
expect an answer by tomorrow at noon.
So, but let's. All right. So looking up in the Stadia, it's called the Stadia, by the way, not the Stradia.
Yeah, that was the He-Man character.
The idea of it, I think, is very fascinating for Google to be coming into the game. Like they're trying to push streaming games,
which isn't a bad thing. We're gonna have a whole podcast eventually on streaming and the pay to play type of thing. So, or no, what is it? The game per? I don't remember what it is. It's somewhere. It's written down somewhere.
Dollars per hour?
No. I don't know. It's somewhere.
I feel like we've kind of lost a lot of direction with this one.
That's all right.
SEGA!
Yeah. Geeks actively making entertainment nothing but the highest quality, where we do all of our research and where we stay on topic all the time.
We did research, and we also... Is that a squirrel?
We got the joke. It's over, Tol.
Yeah. One of them was streaming. Yeah, I mean, one of the topics we want to touch on eventually is streaming and all you can pay to play type of
yeah, 'cause you got
type of things.
You have that Origin thing, right? $99 for the year.
Yeah, we'll save that for another podcast.
Well, we're clearly done talking about Sega. What we got
Why
left?
are we done talking about Sega? We still got lots of stuff we can talk about.
We haven't stayed on topic of Sega. You can condense all of our topic for like 10 minutes of this podcast.
I would disagree.
Fact.
You yammered on for way longer than 10 minutes there.
I found out, while researching this, one of my favorite franchises from the age of the Dreamcast, Shenmue, however you pronounce it, is getting its third installment out this year.
It's clearly one of your favorites because you can't pronounce it.
They never say it in game, so I don't know which way is canon.
Good call, Zio. We're calling you out on this, Tol.
That's right, Tol.
I mean, clearly
it's so favorited that,
It is a fan favorite. It is the most requested game in Sega's history. Every single year, there are fans begging for the third one, petitioning them to produce this game.
What consoles are going to come out on?
Which is weird. And when they say fans...
I think Xbox and PC.
I don't remember Shenmue. Was Shenmue massively popular?
No. It's
because it had a cult following for sure. So I don't know. I don't know if there were enough fans calling for it before. That's probably why it took so long.
I know the second one has
it's such a unique, and the stuff it does is fantastic.
It was a financial failure
and drawn out scenes in a game ever, where you had to walk through that forest, right?
We talked about that in one of the podcasts.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
It had so much nuance in the world, so much detail, and was just gorgeous for its time. And it took so much to produce that even though it was well received by the people who played it, it did not make up the money. It did not recoup its losses, and so they stopped production.
Well, that's a very niche game, though. Yeah. It's not something like even if Shenmue 1 came out today, I think there's a lot of stuff where there'd be a bunch of people that like it, but there'd be a larger portion of people that just be like, it's not my cup of tea, just because of how unique and special it is.
If the game forced me to walk through a forest for 45 minutes, I wouldn't be playing
it. You play Final Fantasy 13?
Yeah. It's not a good game.
Why isn't it a good game?
I think it's an all right JRPG. I just don't think it's a good Final Fantasy title.
No, that's fair. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about Final Fantasy 13 where people have said it was really, really good. It just not if it had been branded as something else besides Final Fantasy, it might have gone a little better.
I think the branding of Final Fantasy, is what hurt it the most, just because like there's certain expectations that come with Final Fantasy games that they just didn't hit.
Because didn't that one push for a bit more on more of like some of like the story elements, and it kind of pulled away a bit from like from classic
weird. Dude, it got super weird. Like Final Fantasy already gets weird, and usually towards the end it always ramps up the weirdness, but like 13 started off weird and then it just got worse, and then they're like, oh hey, let's do 2 more versions of this weirdness and make it worse than that. And
2 more versions?
Yeah, 13.2 and Lightning Returns.
Oh, you were talking about okay, I thought we were talking about a different I enjoyed Lightning.
Thought we were talking about,
I don't know, there's so many numbers. I thought we were talking about 12? I think it was like, I think we were talking about, was it 8 or 9? I don't remember.
For what it's worth, we're talking about the ones who lived in the town called Cocoon that floated in the sky, and the 2 people who came to visit them from down under had Australian accents, and it was weirdly racist.
See, I played Final Fantasy... Yeah, because that was Lightning. That's all I never knew about it. That was one of the first Final Fantasy games that I played that was like not the original like 1, 2, and 3 and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed
worst one.
Yeah, see, I enjoyed it.
It's not a bad game.
There were parts of it, it definitely did drag on.
It is a terrible Final Fantasy game.
It wasn't the classic Final Fantasy that I was expecting either.
Well, it doesn't even have to be classic. I mean, every Final Fantasy has its new thing. So like 7 was the first Final Fantasy that was more of a modern era, and then 8 was the first Final Fantasy to get really lazy writing, and then 9 was really interesting because then they threw monkey people at you that they didn't expect existed, and 10 was a good game with the worst protagonist ever. No, there's 2, and 11.
10 was the one I was thinking about.
Yeah,
I think 12 had the worst protagonist ever because it wasn't even your main character.
I just played 12 and I just beat it. And 12 is way better than 10 in almost every facet, in my opinion.
Fully agree with that. I don't like Vaughn as a main character.
Vaughn's better than Tidus, 100%.
Okay, I'll give you that one.
Wait, which one's Vaughn? It's been a long time since I played
Vaughn is the 17-year-old that was just added into the game because the president of Square Enix was like, hey, we need a younger character for the younger audience.
So at the beginning of 12, there is an awesome soldier character who's on a mission and doing awesome things, and he looks awesome, and you want to play with him. You really connect with him, and he dies in 10 minutes.
Awesome.
He dies in 10 minutes, and then you get to play as his little brother.
Glasses, Tol.
I haven't played it in a while. I just remember that.
I just played this game.
I remember that sequence made me connect with that character, and I wanted to play as him and help him through whatever troubles he had. And he died in 10 minutes, and he ended up playing it as his little brother with no explanation or connection.
So Lightning didn't come into the game until
2006 or 5 or 7.
So, because I'm looking at Final Fantasy 12 right now. And I don't remember playing that one. I think I played like the Lightning one.
Yeah, that's 13.
She had pink hair. That's 13.
Oh, 13. Yeah. I never played 12 then. I played 13.
No, 12.
Well, that's what we were talking about.
Yeah, 13 was one of the worst.
Yeah.
Not a bad game.
Well, now we're talking about 12, and you were talking about Vaughn, and I was so confused.
No, it's because he said 12 had the worst protagonist, and I said, I don't think Vaughn's that bad.
Okay. See, I liked Lightning as a character, and I liked all of the main characters I enjoyed.
I
wasn't a fan of the combat compared to other Final Fantasy. 70%
of the characters in 13. I think a lot of them are very uninteresting and pretty forgetful.
That's fair. They are fairly forgetful because I don't remember who they are.
Lightning's the most remembered one.
Well, her name's also in the title. Although I tell you, I loved what they added in the 13-1 or 2 or whatever it was, where you played as her younger sister.
Yeah. 13.2 I really enjoyed.
There was an option in the menu where the game just played itself for you.
Well, that's in pretty much all the 13s.
Yeah.
Oh, it was great.
Honestly,
I turned that on and I was like,
the first one you could put a
perfect. It can
rubber
beat
band
it for me
on the joystick and have an auto-fire controller pressing the A button, and the game will literally play itself for you.
Nice.
But
I'm okay with it.
I tried that once. I had to come back every few minutes to knock him off of a corner, but that literally worked for, I think, a good 2 hours of content.
I've really got to go back and do what you're doing right now, Zio, and just play through the Final Fantasy games, because I haven't played through a lot of them.
Yeah, like I think it's easy to have nostalgia and rose-colored glasses on all things that you think you enjoyed and really want, and it's easy to jump on the bandwagon to hate characters. Like I played all the Final Fantasies as I've gotten older again, just to kind of see like what my thoughts were, because I hated 8 when I was younger, and I'm like, maybe I'll like it again when I got an adult, and then I hate it even more because I think it gets really lazy. Then 12, like I hated Vaughn too in the beginning. I thought he was a terrible character, but replaying it now, he's not that bad. Is he necessary? No. You can literally do the entire game without him, but I don't think he's a bad character.
The main characters are the other characters.
He isn't the main character, and the way 12 works it is you technically don't have to make him your main person to play. You can swap between anybody and make them the main character. They just threw him in there to have that element of the story, and I'm totally fine with it. I don't think he's that bad. He's not annoying. He's not like Tidus. He's not overconfident. Like, he has this moment where it shines on him in the beginning. That's about it. It tends to focus on Ash and Bosch and Balthier, and I think they do a really good job with the story.
I will say this. I'm replaying 7 right now for the first time since I was a teenager, and it is hitting me in so many ways that I never got before. Now that I have new perspectives, I'm a parent, I have a kid, I've got life experiences in terrible situations like, Sector 7 falling down on the slums.
That's because 7's the best. People think 6 is the best, and 6 is close.
I've never heard that Final Fantasy 6 is the best.
I've heard it argued both ways.
Quite a few hardcore Final Fantasy fans say 6 is the best.
I've tried 6. I can see how the argument could be made, but I disagree.
I think as an external narrative, 6 is the best. I think like just the narrative way it's written and everything and how it plays out, it's really better than 7. But I think what makes 7 the best is its characters.
Its experience.
All right, I am abandoning The Last of Us, and I'm going to play Final Fantasies until they're completed, so that I can tell them the true order of how these games should be.
You keep playing The Last of Us, and you watch Final Fantasy 7 on my channel.
Game. You can beat The Last of Us in like 6 hours if you rush through it.
Can you really?
Yeah.
If you know what you're
garbage
doing.
game. I'm not playing it anymore. It's too
gonna
short.
Take
it's dumb.
It's gonna take you 16 hours, Spen, the way you play video games.
Shut up.
My first playthrough, it took me around 30, just because I was going for the stealth element.
Does it have a thing to show you how many hours you've put into a game so far?
Thought so.
It'd be interesting to see how many hours I am into it.
I think it tells you at the end.
Because I was playing it on hard mode, and then there was some areas I kept getting stuck in, and I replayed for like a couple hours. Although for all those hardcore gamers out there, you're gonna be disappointed in me. I bumped down the difficulty.
That's all right. Just get through the game. Just do the story.
Yeah,
Sega.
I'm enjoying it.
Sega. Have any of you guys played Bayonetta?
Yeah.
No.
There's a game produced by Sega. Talk about it. We got 5 minutes left.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, the podcast really just followed the same route that Sega went. So it's still a podcast about Sega.
It's still Sega themed. We're just not talking about Sega anymore because
we started out talking about it. We're like, all right, and then we got really into it, and now it's just a thing of the past.
Mm-hmm.
We still reference it from time to time because it's got some cool stuff, but there we go. Yeah. Essentially, this podcast is the life cycle of Sega.
Yep.
Yeah. You're welcome, guys. We kept the true spirit of Sega for you. But after The Last of Us, you should play the Final Fantasies.
You definitely should.
Maybe. I've played 1, 2, 3, and 5, and then the one with Lightning, 13. I never beat 5, though, because I think there was an issue with the game, or maybe I didn't complete something I was supposed to, but I'm supposed to land my airship on top of a castle in the mountains, and I went to it, and I went to land my airship, but it wouldn't land. So then I went and I got my buddy's guide to go and figure out how to do it, and I followed the guide. I'm like, I've done everything that I'm supposed to. And I couldn't beat the game, so that was it. I didn't finish it.
I played some of the originals, but I never beat the originals. 6 was the last one that I really played. I don't remember if I finished it or not, but I only played it once, and I've only like read about it here and there. 7 on is kind of where I got hardcore.
Okay. Final Fantasy 1 is one of the few RPGs that I've beaten a bunch of times, but only just because it's like I had it on the Game Boy Advance, and then I had it on the DS, And then it was on mobile and on tablet. So it'd be something where I'm like lying in bed and I'm like, oh, I don't feel like sleeping right now. So I'd pull it out and play it for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
You know,
and
it's actually gotten a 3D remake on mobile devices. I was playing it on my phone a little while back. It was good.
Well, they had the
I think the 3D remake was on the
DS.
Yeah, that's when it was pretty
they
cool.
made it years ago. It was like in 2006.
I found it.
Yeah, and I think they did that 3D remake on like the first few games.
Yeah, they did. That's when they were doing that because they had made people were clamoring for the Final Fantasy VII remake, and so they
started remaking.
They made Crisis Core, and they started to remake the other games,
which was a brilliant idea. I really hope for the rest of the existence they just dangle that little carrot in front of you for the rest of your life.
No way, man. April is rumored for Final Fantasy VII.
Chapter 1.
Rumored. Yeah, but how many times has it been rumored to be coming out and then it was something different?
This is from an actual source that has been correct like 4 or 5 times.
You know what? I just hope it doesn't go the way of Duke Nukem
Not for
forever.
long.
We'll see. I'll tell you what, in April, as soon as that Final Fantasy VII news drops, Spen, we're just going to talk about it.
We could spend an entire podcast just talking about FF7. 2 or 3.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I won't be able to join you guys for that one then because I haven't played it yet. So
I'm playing through it right now. Watch it on my channel.
I have been watching parts of it, but I start to watch it and I'm like, God, I'm not gonna enjoy it as much playing it myself the first time because I
just play it.
There's so much in it
I'll
that you
mail
can watch
you one
it
of my
and
12
learn
copies.
everything about it and still find something new when you watch it or when you play it for yourself.
When they remake it, I'm gonna play it.
You can't play the remake.
It's not the
first,
same thing.
Why does it have to be the same thing?
It won't be the same. It's
Why?
not so much that it has to be. I'm okay with the remake being different, but you have to experience the original first.
I don't have to experience the original first.
Have you played Spyro, the very first Spyro game, Spyro the Dragon?
I played it like once at a friend's house.
Okay, what about the remaster?
I never owned PlayStation until the PlayStation 3.
Same thing with Crash Bandicoot, the original versus the remaster. It's the
only
same
Crash
thing,
Bandicoot
but it's a
I
different
played
thing.
was on.
Well, no, I disagree.
Was on
that's
Uncharted.
Like, I think if you play the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, you pretty much get the experience of Crash Bandicoot.
No, the controls are a lot tighter now than they used to be.
Tighter,
and apparently
not,
they fixed a bunch of the issues where because wasn't in the original Crash Bandicoot there were some questionable things where you'd like jump or try to make the different things, but you wouldn't make the jump because just it wasn't like the whatever the blocking's called, it wasn't maybe done properly. Hitboxes. No, not hitboxes. That's not the right thing. But the collision. There we go. Where the collision might not have been done properly or something.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
There's a lot of things.
Then they fixed some of it.
They fixed. But
yeah.
The difference is 7. The story of the remake is going to be different than the story of 7. Like the ultimate story will.
Why is it going to be different?
Because he's already said he's going to make changes to fit the 7 universe better.
To remaster it,
Well,
they're
then-
making full 3D
then if it
environments.
fits
They're letting
this-
the characters interact with the environments in different ways, changing some of the sequences to make it more visually stimulating for audiences. We don't
Well,
have.
if it's going to be better, why do I want to play the old one?
Well, we don't know if it's
So
going
it's-
to be better.
Oh, it's going to
just
be
gonna
better,
be
all right.
Different.
I mean, Final Fantasy VII is like one of the worst games of all time to begin with, so why would I want to play the worst version of it?
And with that,
You gotta play it, then. Oh my gosh. You have a PS3. You have a PS4, right?
Yeah.
Okay, get it on the PS4.
Yeah, but then I have to buy money for a game that I'm not going to play until the remaster comes out, and I'm just going to play the
$5.
remaster.
Listen, get it on the PS4. There is
yeah.
a 4 times speed that you
Yeah.
can implement, so you can move around and you can just fly through the game.
Yeah, but then I don't experience how it should be.
Spin. Quit making
Okay.
excuses.
Then there's
Either
also
do it or
another
don't do
thing
it.
you can do. There's a 4 times speed, and then there's also a master mode where you can never die, and you have unlimited limit
but
break, and
I
then
don't
you can
like that.
experience the game for what it is.
Actually, I have
No.
a perfect idea.
I'm just
I have a perfect
honestly,
idea.
I'm not going to
Take
play it
a
until the
weekend off
remaster
work
comes out.
and just play the game. Don't sleep.
You
Don't do
don't-
anything. Just play the game.
Yeah, that doesn't work, unfortunately.
Totally
It
works.
doesn't work that way.
No. Not where I work. I can't take a weekend off. I'm too important.
Get it on your phone. It's portable.
No, but seriously, I probably won't play it until the remake comes out. And even when the remake comes out, it probably won't be till a good portion of time after, just because
The
there's
remake
so
is going to
many
be
games.
episodic. So you
Is it?
Yeah. So you get like. Okay, when the
Oh,
game
so
came
it'll
out,
be-
it was
okay.
4 separate discs of content.
If it's going to
The
be
remake's
episodic,
going to be episodic, and it might. Was it 3? I don't know. Most games back then were 4, so I might be crossing a wire here. But the fact of the matter is, if it's going to be episodic, then you're going to be waiting months, if not years, in between chapters.
I'm totally fine with that.
Versus being able to play the entire story, start to finish now, and then having an improved upon version of it.
Then, in that case, I'm probably just going to play it episodically then. Okay.
Spen, you're hopeless.
I'm gonna show you guys something right now. I don't know if you can see it from here. See that right there?
Yeah.
Both sides of it are stacked full. I've also got stuff in, nobody can see this in the podcast, all over the place, of just games that are still on my to play list.
Yeah, and I've got about 500 games in my Steam library that I've never touched. You gotta prioritize.
We all have
a
growing catalog of games we need to play that we're never gonna play.
Hell.
Do you have any idea how many games are in my Steam library that I haven't played? I've got like 1,200 games in my Steam library, and I've played about 20% of them. Thank you, Humble Bundle and Steam sales.
Thank you for buying a bunch of games that you're never gonna play.
I'm gonna play all of them eventually, probably not.
That sounds like a very Sega sentiment, and with that, we're probably at a good point to end this podcast.
We can't. This podcast can never end.
This podcast doesn't end until Spen says it ends.
This is the podcast.
You are not the host.
Never ends. Yes, it goes on and on, my friends. Some people started watching it not knowing what it was, and now they're trapped forever all together just because this is the cast
that's
never
not fair.
ends. Yes, it goes on and on, my...
All right. How do I kick him from the call? See, I don't want to end the podcast now because the last 10 minutes, this has been the most fun in a podcast ever, just talking about stuff.
Yeah. It's shooting
you
shit.
Just had that as the podcast as a Sega. No one's going to listen to this part.
That's okay. But unfortunately, that's pretty much all the time we've got. We made it a little bit over the hour point, so we should probably end it here. So... I don't want to do it, but thanks for watching or listening to the podcast. If you're watching it, you're probably just watching a picture at the end. I forgot to do the cool thing at the beginning and at the end of the podcast where I mentioned, hey, if you're listening...
That's weird.
What are you doing, Tol?
My phone was making noises. Shut up.
So if you're listening to this on YouTube, you're going to see in the background, we've got a really cool picture in the background. If you have any cool screenshots that you want to send to us that we can use for the background, whether it's in Next to Nothing or no, not Next to Nothing, that's our web series. Oops, I always mix that up. Whether it's in No Man's Sky or any other video games, we want to send us screenshots. We would love to throw them up in the background to see all the cool different things that you've seen. We've also got our YouTube channel that you're watching this on possibly, or you're listening to it on one of our many podcast sites that it's being hosted on. We've got tons of different videos. We love making content. That's why we're Geeks, actively making entertainment. And come on, stop by, say hello, hang out. And jump in the Discord. Make sure you at Smiley and get him to fact check stuff for you.
Yes,
and
fact check everything.
Yeah, that's his job. We pay him to do that.
Can I just? I'd like to leave on one final thought here.
What's up? Thanks, Tol.
It's always good to get sound effects through other audio.
Right?
Yeah.
It sounds so bad.
That's just how they're gonna stay. I'm not gonna overlay them and cut that stuff out. That's just how it's gonna be. Because that's what you get with this podcast: raw, unadulterated entertainment.
Oh yeah.
From raw, unadulterated people.
Yes.
I'm adulterated.
That's fine. I'm raw.
Oh, Atlas officially reveals Persona 5 the Royal trailer. Features a new character.
Yeah, but now you've time-stamped our...
No, this was thanks. 2 days ago. It's fine.
Now you've time-stamped it. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. We'll catch you around some other time, and don't play Final Fantasy if you haven't played it yet until the remake comes out.
Don't listen to him.